So just to preface this episode, this stream, a few weeks ago I decided to stream my progress on building or rebuilding Anker's website for their Nano plug charger. It was just an experiment, just to see what I could do, make it more interesting and various things like that. So I streamed it. Here's an edited version of that stream. It'll be 2 parts, which this is the first part, of course. So I hope you enjoy it. If front end and web development is kind of your thing, then this is what this channel is all about. My name's Samuel Gregory, so if that's your bag, then make sure you hit subscribe. And without further ado, on with the episode. So this is the website. It's Anker. They've added all kind of like, snow and crap to it, but you can see it's a kind of sort of basic website. You've got these images here. There's a slideshow here. There's also a lot wrong with this website. A lot of these images, for instance here, a lot of the wording here is baked into the image, so they're losing a lot of SEO when it comes to content being on their website, really. So that was kind of a weird thing that I noticed, and generally I think it's quite boring. Like, we've got really simple things, and I ran some insights on Google, and it doesn't actually perform that well. Lighthouse isn't the be-all and end-all of the performance of a website. It's real user interactions. It can sometimes get it wrong, but it doesn't perform that well. I think that's partly because it's built on Shopify and there's a lot kind of going on loading wise. But anyway, I generally thought, and I think there's a few improvements we can make here. So let's just crack on with it. Let's see how it goes. I'll do it component by component. So we'll do the header, do the HTML header, then the CSS of the header. Blah blah blah. We'll do it like that. The other thing to just quickly say about Pinegrow is that I'm using a plain HTML document here. I'm starting from fresh, but I've actually used their normalize template that they have, and all that does is, I said earlier about browsers just decide on the size of a H1, the size of a H2. Well, all browsers have their own interpretations of how those things should look. Headings are a bit of an extreme example, but there's let's have a quick look in normalize. So long story short, I've added normalize, and what it's done, it's set a consistent line height for all the browsers, because all the creators of normalize have recognized that everyone does line height differently. All the browsers do line height differently, so this is just setting it. You can then reset it after that. Other than that, we're starting completely from scratch. Got my images loaded into this folder and the fonts that are going to be used on this website. So I have kind of all my assets ready to go. So let's just focus on the HTML. So I'm in my index PHP here, going to my body, and what I tend to like doing is just creating a header, a main, and a footer, and that's kind of my basis thing, because these are separate areas. It would make sense that these are not nested within each other. And then I tend to do I can't see it there, we'll go for nav, because there's going to be a nav bar in the header, right? So I've got my header and I have my nav, which is going to be this central kind of navigation system, but we also have the Anker logo on the left, and we have this other kind of area on the right. So let's get those in. Let's get an image and put that there. So I'm already looking at this like flex. I'm using Flexbox here because we've got these 3 main areas. We've got our image, we've got our nav, and then we've got another area on the right hand side which is going to contain these other links. If I stick a UL in here, so I get a bit of content going on, and then an LI. If I insert content, maybe. Yeah, LI. If I press 5 now, you can see a 5 pop up. When I click that, it will insert 5 list items in there, which is really cool. And then here, I'm just going to put 3 links. So once again, insert content at the top of the thing, 3 links, boom. There we go. So I have some content here. If I go to my header here and then start adding some styling, but if I give it a class of header, I want to start using Sass. The good thing about sasses in Pinegrow is that you can, if you write rules that have prefixes that's needed, Pinegrow will add those prefixes, whereas in CSS mode I need to add those prefixes, so it's kind of like a cheat. But let's do that, add the header, and now let's make this into CSS. So manage style sheet, here we go. You should save the file first. Okay, thanks for telling me that. In fact, I think you can do it here. Convert to Sass. There we go. So now that's Sass. Now we get the gloriousness of adding prefixes. So let's make this into flex, display flex thing. Let's change this image too, because I've got the Anker logo going on in my images. So images, boom. Let's already jump into a bit of kind of, you know, SEO layout optimization here, because we should be setting a width and a height on images. Now, what I tend to do is, if we go to the browser, what I tend to do is actually inspect this, the kind of final size, whether this is in the browser, which we're copying right now, or whether it's in Figma. So this is 92 by 22. So I've just added a width and a height to that, and it actually looks not too bad. So with this header now, we have done the display flex thing over here. Now we kind of want to space them all out. So let's go to our flex container stuff here, and we want them spaced apart. So now you can start to see what we're trying to achieve here. And then we probably want them in the middle as well, like this. That looks good. And that looks pretty good. Let's jump back a bit. I want to load our fonts in here. I am going to copy and paste from the website we've already built. Let's bring in some of this code. First of all, I want to preload the fonts. I want to preload my fonts as soon as the page loads, because as you might know, the website will, the browser will load things line by line. You can see that I've loaded the WAF2, the WAF, and the TTF here, the WAF2, WAF, and TTF. Now, the reason why these are commented out is because when the browser was loading, if the browser loads the WAF2 versions, it will complain. There'll be an error in the console saying that the WAF2 version wasn't used in a certain amount of time, and that's an error in the console, which doesn't look good for SEO. The reason why all these are commented out is because these aren't actually used on the website, so I can remove those. So we're only using Whitney Medium and semi-bold, so I'm going to remove those two here. So I'm only preloading the WAF2 versions of those fonts, because most browsers generally support WAF2, but we still want to provide the fallback anyway. So with that being said, we preloaded the fonts. Now we need to add them to the CSS. So if I open up the style.sass and paste in our font faces, make this bigger so we can see it. You'll see that I've commented out these ones because I, after making the website, realized don't need those at all. So might as well save on some bandwidth there and download. So then we're loading the fonts, because these are in line with the font files. You know, we don't need to go to CSS fonts, and we're loading the WAF2, the WAF, the TTF, and that's all. We're going for font display swap, so we don't get that flashing. But to be honest, this was copied directly from the Anker website, so they did the right thing here. So we're still loading all these fonts, and we're loading the different versions and the fallbacks in the code, but we're only preloading the WAF2 versions. The icon font here is something we're going to use for the header, so we're going to get straight into using this icon font stuff. Again, this was copied straight from the Anker website, so we can just save that there and close that. And we can close that. So that's kind of preloading those fonts. Doing the theme color, this is all right. I'll copy over the theme color, and we can talk about that. The theme color is a new thing in Safari, which looks quite cool. You can only see it if you do the new reduced version of Safari, which is kind of weird. They don't, if you do the expanded version. So expanded version is probably what most people are familiar with, where you've got the search bar in Safari in the middle, and all the tabs are kind of above that, but they've then reduced that to the search bars being within each of the tabs. This is the only way that you can see a coloured bar at the top here. I mean, Apple haven't done anything to their site, which is kind of strange. I guess they've just made it white. Nor with Facebook. Oh, they've made it black. So so that's what we want to do here. I've just copied the colour that I've taken and just drag that into just there. So then when we preview this in Safari, it looks kind of cool. So let's keep cracking and let's start to build out our website. So we've got our layout here. I think there might be a bit of padding. Let's actually take it from the website rather than guessing, because why not? Go to header here, and then we want to put a margin of 10 pixels. Cool. Let's sort out this nav. So I like using BEM for my styling. So if you're not familiar with BEM, it's inside the header. So we start off with header, then it's an element within that. So we go header nav, and we can create that. We add it to that style sheet, and then we can start to clean up this this UL, this nav. Oh, it's a nav actually. So in fact, I'm going to remove that class from there and add it to there. List type, none, display flex on this, so they all fall in line. Again, I've put the link in the chat to see, you can potentially see what we're doing here. Right, let's set the body font actually, because that hasn't been done. Icon font, and then body. So there we go. We've got our fonts now loading, and it looks a bit cleaner. Cool. There's a bit more of a margin we need to remove, I think. So I never remember whether it's margin or padding. And then we might add a bit of padding on the LI. So once again, BEM. So we're in header, nav, item. Let's do that one. And add an 1 EM padding. Cool. These are actually links, so probably gonna have to wrap these in a link. There we go. Cool. Because we're using BEM, we can nest it here. Text decoration, none. And let's put a hover and a focus. Always put hover and a focus, because you know it's only polite. No, it's often people forget about the focus state. You want to make sure that if someone's using their keyboard, that they're able to see that they're on them. So there we go. There it is. Probably put a nice transition on there, because you know, transition. My favorite transition is 0.3 seconds ease. I'm a bit partial to ease out, but make sure that's over here. I'm a bit partial to ease out, but ease tends to be my kind of favorite. And then we've got a bit of niceness going on in there. Cool. And now let's add these icons as well. Oh no, they're actually SVGs. So if I copy this, edit this HTML. Here we go. Instead of doing the header nav, we do it within just the entire header. Let's get some classes going here. So header side nav, maybe? Header side nav, SVG, width 100%, height 100%, but then make the, again, I'm just looking at the Anker website here, they've got a width and a height of these as 1.5 rem. In fact, they're wrapped in a span, so let's wrap all these in a span. I don't like the way Pinegrow wraps these things, how it organizes the code. It flattens stuff, it sort of doesn't need to be flattened, as you saw there. So then we just write a span, and then this span, and a class of header, side nav, icon, right, and this can have width and height. Side nav. There we go. Let's copy that throughout. And I'll nick the icons from my other site. Yeah, cool. So let's go to our side nav and then give that the old display flex. And do the old space between and center. There we go. Let's go to sidebar, header side nav, and go to A. Make those display block, and then give them a margin of pixels. So we've done this header at the top there, and I think it would be cool now to look at this hero, getting our images into Pinegrow and actually animating them and getting some sort of interesting hero thing going on here. So before we move on to that hero section, I just remembered a little thing that I wanted to do with regards to the fixed kind of header, because that's actually a fixed header, and also when you scroll down, the kind of this blue bar comes down. Let me actually, so here you've got our version. When you scroll down, kind of you got this blue thing pop up. It says website created by Jubilee Draft. So I'm going to just do that. The only reason why I want to do that is just because it's not using interactions. It's just using a small bit of JavaScript that I wrote. So we might as well just, it takes 2 seconds to do. It looks cool, and it uses more CSS animations rather than like GSAP animations, which arguably have a lot more performance in less code. So we dip into that. First thing I want to probably do is add this kind of hidden, I guess, header or something like this. Well, actually, no, the first thing we want to do is probably make this just position fixed. And then width 100%, top 0, left 0. And then probably a background of white. So, interesting point. You'll notice this is kind of floating over now. This is probably because we probably need a wrapper around this header. So in fact, no, we're going to do a wrapper within the header. So if we add a kind of div in here, we're going to move those within our div. We're going to apply, let's give this a class of header inner, and a class, and I'm going to move this, and then header inner, and I want to move the margin, the flex and margin stuff into there, and I want to leave the position fixed stuff in there. That should be fine now. I want to set a max width on this header as well, so it will kind of lock off if the browser gets too big. So what they've done, they've got a max width of 1200 in there. width of 1200, and now this should be good to go. So if I make this bigger, you can see, we need a padding left and then a margin of 0 and auto. Cool, so you can see that it's central there and that it never extends beyond that and then gets smaller. Now let's do our hidden header, let's call it. So we've got our outer thing here. I guess we want another div here. Insert layout div, and we'll add it at the bottom. And I think this can also have a class of header inner. I think we can steal all the same properties. So we can also go header inner and then add a modifier there. This, I don't know, extra. Great debate on what classes, what the names of classes should be. So we've got our header inner, extra. And the difference with this one is that we want it to be position absolute. We want it to be, you know, taking over the whole thing. I'm just wondering why we've got that extra bit here. Let's see how we go. Let's see how we go. And I want to get that color too. So if we go inner, and then the background color. So yeah, it's not. Oh no, I know why. It's because we've got the header inner and we're setting a max width on that. So actually, let's remove the header inner because we don't want that. We want another div inside with that header inner class. So layout header inner. Here we go. Now we get our max width, and then within there I'm just going to add some content and then just say this site was created by Jupiter and the giraffe. Maybe we can add a link. We probably want a text center as well. Here we go. Right, and color of white. Where are we? Header. I probably want to change that class header extra. Text create, and then this header extra, does that have any? And change this to header extra. Cool. Center. We just need to give it a height. Alright, cool. That looks about right to me. And then header extra text. Let's make the link white. I suppose we could start creating some variables here because we are using Sass. And actually, we can just use CSS variables. So if you've never used CSS variables, they are quite fun. So if I go to primary color, I can set that as that, and now we can use this. Wherever we need. And I prefer actually to go color and then primary. So then I go color white, just kind of like a prefix thing. So 1, 2, 3. Color primary. Cool. And let's put text decoration underline. Cool, just gives it a little thing. Right, so we have this now kind of showing. I guess what we want to do is, if we put the extra on with CSS transitions, you want to avoid things like repainting. Any kind of animation, you want to avoid things like repainting the browser. And there are a few CSS properties that do not repaint the browser, and these are things like transform, opacity. I'll put a link somewhere where you can see all the properties that don't repaint the browser, and they give off the best performance. So that's what I'm thinking. That's what I always think about when I do transitions and whatever. GSAP actually does quite well with this. It does a lot of it knows what properties to animate unless you specify them. So if you're just moving the X or Y, it's not using the top or left, it's actually using the transform property. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add a transform, and we're going to minus 100% this, so you can now see it's hidden. If I now add a transition, so we've added a transform and now we want to add a transition. If we transition the property transform, again my 0.3 seconds, love it, and then we put ease, then now whatever we do to transform now will just transition. So with that all being said, let's undo that because it's not applied to the style. So I just want to do this. So minus 100%, and then a transition. Cool, so that's applied to the style. Now let's do a little bit of JavaScript. So let's add a new file, main.js. We're probably not going to see this now until we have to probably fake the size of the website. So is our JavaScript. So let's do let's const header equals document dot get element. Let's do by ID, and let's add an ID to this. Just makes it a bit more. So notice. Let's give an ID of notice. Okay. Now just to header does not equal null, just in case. So on that, so window.add event listener scroll. Let's use modern. So when we scroll, we need the event, and we want to say if e dot scroll y is greater than or equal to 200, let's do greater than. So if it's equal to 200, so the person has scrolled down more than 200, then we'll get the header and style dot transform equals translate 0. So we're moving it to 0 because it's minus 100 right now. We're just saying move to 0. So what you can do, interesting little tidbit, translate uses the CPU to do the animation, whereas if you do translate 3D, you take advantage of a GPU. So if we go, so the X, Y, well actually we just do 333 like this. Else we want to just remove, because this is going to put an inline style on it, and it's so then by using that we just remove it. So given that we've just wanted to leverage the GPU there, let's go to our CSS and see how, because I've never done this before actually, so you can see it's got translate Y. We could manually change that, but let's see if there's anything here. Yeah, so we can't. Maybe we can just do that. There we go. So now Pinegrow knows that by filling them all out, we want to do 3. And you get a bit extra performance. You're taking the load off of the CPU and getting the GPU to do these transitions, which is pretty juicy. So let's preview this now. Something wasn't working, so I realized I hadn't put e.current target, which will give me the proper scroll position of the window. I don't know, but you can see that now. We scroll down, it appears. Scroll up, it goes. So thank you for tuning into this stream. This is actually part 1, and I'll be releasing part 2 very, very soon when I've edited it. And part 2 is all about bringing in some more interactions and various things like that. So once again, stay tuned, hit subscribe and hit the notification bell, because then you'll be notified when I release part 2. Hope this was helpful, and I'll see you soon.